Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some game-changing work, and it's always a delight. This episode is no different. I'm delighted to have Nicole Spiegel-Gotsch, who's CEO of Mavyn. I'm going to talk about her career journey, how she got to where she is, and everything in between. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Laura. How are you?
Tired. I saw a stat that I think I've flown around the world like 3 times already with the amount of miles I've put on this year. Traveling is bad.
You're an expert. You're an expert traveler now. It's official.
It is kind of weird. I went from someone who's like, I kind of travel for business, but like not really, to like, I travel all the time for business. It's like, my favorite travel hack is, please go ahead and get the lounge access.
Oh, yes.
It is worth it. So, we know how the podcast works. I always ask the same question, and I'm always delighted by the answers, and I'm sure yours will be no different. So, Nicole, what was your first job?
Okay. So this is a great question. First job. It depends on how you want to define it. So I was one of those people who was always working. So even though on my resume, my first job is sort of defined as which one I thought kind of started to shape my career path, my real first job, I'd have to say, was when I was a kid, I volunteered at my local library putting on programs for other younger kids. So if we're going to be technical, that's my real first job. But if you're going to talk about my career, I started at a new media nonprofit in the 90s during the first .com. And that was really an exciting ride. I had been an intern in their internship program. And after I completed my year, they hired me to co-manage the program, which I then doubled the size of it, created a revenue stream for it, got it grant funding, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. So does that sort of give you an idea?
That sounds like a lot you did in your very first job.
Yeah.
I love how it's like, it's a nonprofit, but I have 18,000 jobs. Right.
Yeah.
Folks work at nonprofits. Like, it is always very rewarding, but a lot of work. Okay, so we start there. Mm-hmm. How did we get to becoming the CEO of Mavyn? Like, what was that journey like?
It's been this sort of twisty career path. I love doing nonprofit, working for the nonprofit for a couple of reasons. One, it was when all the technology was new. All the players in the technology space were new. I got a lot of exposure to angel investing and venture capital. We just had so many exciting things going on, not to mention the actual social component of placing students in paid internships with tech companies. But I really wanted a creative career, or at least that's what I thought. So that's what I thought. Yeah, exactly. So I left the nonprofit to pursue a career as a designer, and I became an in-house designer for advertising and promotion for a major publisher. And that was also equally, that had its pluses too. Pretty rapidly promoted, very high volume, a lot of interesting work. We had over 30 different product lines, so I got to touch a lot of different brands and properties. But what it lacked was that sort of startup energy that I had been exposed to early on. And I think once you're bitten by that bug, it's really hard to shake it.
Yep.
So I ended up leaving in-house work to work for myself as a one-woman creative shop for 13 years.
Whoa.
So, And again, that had its own ups and downs, because like we were talking about before, when you're in-house, there's that infrastructure that's there. You have the benefit, of a team, of maybe set processes, budgets have been allocated. A lot of things have already been set out. Whereas, and you probably know this on the other side, when you're an entrepreneur, you're paving the way for the first time for yourself. You can see what other people have done, and learn from them, but ultimately you end up having to make your own mistakes and successes. So, there was a lot of learning along the way. And after a while of sort of this one woman creative shop thing was good, but it was really, I didn't want to be everything to everyone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was just getting broader and broader and broader, as well as deep. And that has its own challenges. At a certain point, you got to look at it and you're like, okay, am I going to scale? Am I going to stay small? Where am I going to focus? What do I want to focus on? What's the trajectory here? And I decided that the trajectory was to really tighten things up and focus on my strengths. And also on what my clients needed. So it ended up being what is now Mavyn. I help women build, launch, and grow by mastering their marketing. And that's been super rewarding. It seems disconnected sometimes, I think, to people on the outside looking in. But my graduate thesis was on barriers to women's entrepreneurship. My undergrad thesis was a feminist thesis. So it sort of brings everything together. My own experiences, my research, and helping sort of advance and empower women.
Awesome. And obviously there's lots of different, focus programs, focus on women. Like, how do you sort of set yourself apart?
I think it's the combination of experience that I've got. It's the breadth and the depth, the ability to quickly identify and assess what the challenges are and how we can fix them. And also being able to look at anything really holistically. So it's not just I always say marketing doesn't exist in a vacuum. So I'm never just looking at the marketing. It's like, okay, well, what's your brand? What's happening on the business development side? What is the revenue model? Are all these things in alignment? What do we need to shore up, or what needs to be strengthened in order to make this really succeed? And that ability, that perspective really makes a difference to my clients.
And so I'm sure it must be like remarkably challenging to kind of get stuff off the ground. Like, what's the one piece, probably like more than this, what are the kind of top two pieces of advice that you give to your clients?
Low-hanging fruit. That's one of the number one. And it sounds so easy and everyone says it. The thing is, when you're in the thick of your business, sometimes it can be hard to identify what really is the low-hanging fruit. So I always start there, and that launch doesn't begin on your launch date. It begins way before. You should be doing what I call pre-launch way before then. And those pre-launch activities are going to have sort of the standard goals in there, like building awareness, building an audience, getting customer feedback, iterating. All of that stuff can go under that pre-launch bucket. A lot of people talk about MVP, the minimal viable product. There was a webinar I heard where a young woman talked about MVP, the minimal marketable viable product. And yeah, exactly. And I think that distinction is worth making, because a lot of times companies go out early with the MVP and they're surprised when, it works, but they're not able to sell it. So you want to make sure that it's not just at a level where it's functional, but it's also a level where someone's willing to buy it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like what and that kind of intersection of the two, because like how much is my services worth versus how much people are willing to pay for it. And oftentimes, especially women led businesses, undersell their services. I know I was guilty of this when we first started, and I know many women are, because if you just want to try and get in, it's like, okay, once we get in, we'll be able to like move up, but you don't want to like get beat up on price and forgetting that like actually I'm worth a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because that's the other side of it too. At what point, sort of stepping into your value and figuring out what that looks like and how does that translate when you're pitching yourself, when you're pricing, coming up with your pricing. I have a client right now that I'm working with, and we're talking about strategy, and it's like, at what point is it penetration pricing, or are you going to sort of get those first batch of customers with special promotional discounts, or however you want to, whatever strategy you want to pursue? And then at what point do you leave that behind, right? You graduate from that to being like, okay, I'm a more established player now. I know what I have to offer and what I'm bringing to the table. This is my price,
And if you don't want to pay for it, then you got the right kind of client.
Right. I mean, a lot of it has to do with knowing who your client is and what they're willing to pay before you put it out there. And that always goes back to research, which is sort of, people don't really enjoy doing that part. And that's one of my favorite parts. So it works out.
I totally get it. So, looking back on what you've been able to do, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Nicole?
Sometimes I think there's things 18-year-old Nicole could tell me right now. But to be honest, what would I maybe not to be quite so serious, that there's lots of time to adjust course. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. In fact, it's guaranteed not to be perfect the first time. It's tough because I was working from such an early age. Every single experience fed into how I approached the subsequent ones. So that early job, I was only 20 something, maybe 22 or 23. Maybe that fearlessness is something to talk about looking back, is to kind of keep cultivating that as well,
Yeah, I think that's a big part of that. It's like, hey, listen, it's like, what if you fall? And it's like, oh my gosh. It's like, okay, but what if you don't fall? Like, why operate from a place of fear instead of operating from a place of abundance? And I think that comes back to like this whole idea of abundance versus scarcity mindset. Like, oh, if I screw this up this one time, no one else will ever understand, versus what if it all works out?
Yeah. I mean, some of it also is that you just have to get through. It's okay to have that fear. It's okay to, maybe be anxious before the meeting or whatever. You can just remind yourself that you're going to get through it, right? Like that there's another side of it, that yes, the fear is there, but you don't have to let it stop you. You can walk through it. I think that can also really help. A lot of times I get the impression that people people think that they have to be, super confident or not have any doubts or not get any jitters. And it's like, no, you're going to feel those feelings. It's just understanding that it's okay to feel them, and we can still find a way forward while having those feelings. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you can go in spite of the fear, or you can go with the fear, and I think there's like an acronym about what fear can be, and like it's like one of them is like a positive one, one's the negative one. Like just take it and like, all right, we're just gonna roll with it. But and speaking of which, just kind of rolling with it, like talking about a time when you were like, there's no way I'm gonna get through a challenge, and then you did.
Oh my God, there's been so many times. I'm trying to think of a really good one. Fortunately, most of them came up as surprises, because if I had known about them in advance, I definitely would have been more terrified. So, for example, the one that I always think about is when I was at the New Media Nonprofit, we had this huge meeting or event with, 350 people. We had our big sponsors. We had the CEOs of all these companies. And I thought that I would just be, sort of part of the event, but I didn't think I was going to have to speak. Well, at the last minute, I'm suddenly our executive director called me up and said, "Okay, and now Nicole is going to talk to you about the program." And I was totally unprepared. There was nothing, like no note cards, no warning, nothing. Podium, right? Like a podium and a microphone. I was not used to that setup. And I really, as I was handed the microphone, I was sure that I was just going to bomb, or, I felt my heart thumping, my hands were shaking. And somehow once I started going and just talking about the program, because I thought to myself, all right, just breathe. You know this. Just act like you're talking one-on-one to somebody about the program. And by doing that, I was able to relax and get through it. But in that split second, I thought to myself, oh no, there's no way I'm doing this.
You're like, oh, help me.
Exactly.
No, I completely understand. But the thing is, then you did it. And that's
oh yeah. Oh, I totally. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I totally lean on that to this day. Every time I'm getting up in front of people, because that was one of the first, I think that was the first time ever I was in front of that larger group. Mm-hmm. So I'm always leaning on that moment. And I think the more of those we rack up over the course of our career, like each time we overcome one of those obstacles, it makes us stronger for the next one. And there's been lots of them, believe me.
And I think it's also you sort of build up that kind of stronger muscle that you often need for when you have those moments. You're like, oh my God. Like when you kind of, it's sort of like, and like if you're playing a video game, it's like you build extra lives. So that like if you have to like go in on one, you can go back to that moment where, hey, wait a minute. What happened when I thought I would never be able to get through this thing? And then you did. So you see, it always works out. So even as challenging as this might be right at this moment, it's not, you don't have to worry about it. You will find your way. You will 100% find your way. And I think that's the kind of key around a lot of this stuff, is that like you will find the way. It's not the only, it isn't going to be a terrifying situation. You will always find the proper way through, over and through.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're willing to adapt. I always feel like that's one of the most important, or another important thing too. I don't know if you've ever seen this show, Travelers. But there's something one of the guys says in the show, that the plan never survives contact with, like the plan for the mission never survives contact with the actual mission. And that feels so true. Like, there's this balance between knowing how much to plan and when to plan and how to prepare, and being able to just, like what you were saying before, roll with it and adapt.
Yeah, you just have to roll. I think sometimes, like, I see a lot of this with younger folks. Like, they are so unaccustomed to failure, so that it is literally a heart attack if they do it the first time. And you're like, okay, did you never fall and scrape your knee? Did you ever get a C on a test? Did you ever like be late for something? Like, it is not the end of the world. Like, those things help you learn. Like, you never lose. If you either win or you learn. And I think sometimes that gets the learn part is what folks seem to skip over. Like, oh, well, if I didn't get it, I lost. Like, no, you're like, okay, well, next time I'll do this, this, and this to cover for this. So it's just a matter of folks understanding that like it's a constant growing process, and you're never out on your own. Like you have folks, you're always surprised how many people you have who have your back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we also, two things. One, I think it's a little bit harder for people now than it was for us in some ways because you're so visible. Like, right. Between social media and it can seem or feel like you're under a microscope a little bit, like like everything is much more visible to the world than maybe it was when I started out. But at the same time, I noticed that we teach people how to perceive us and how to perceive what we do or don't do. And I noticed that if we approach our own failures or places where we need to grow with a sense of humor or forgiveness or, oh, hey, okay, I'm going to learn how to do that better next time, other people give us grace. They start to come into the same mindset that we're projecting. It even happened today. Like I was emailing with a colleague and I asked them if they had a certain asset, and he was like, nope, I don't have that. And it was very matter of fact. And I thought to myself, gee, if that was me, I would have really felt bad or like somehow not up to snuff because I didn't have this thing. And he's just really matter of fact and he's okay with it. Maybe I should take a cue from that. It's like, just by us being okay with ourselves, it teaches other people to be okay with us, I think.
I hope. But again, I think oftentimes there's this thing about you having to be very visible. Like, you actually don't have to be. Like, you can be visible on your own terms. Yeah. And I often say this, just like, you can curate how you live out loud. Mm-hmm. and the way that you choose. And it doesn't mean you have to make Instagram your highlight reel, but it is for like, you can pop up when you need to. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I think that's the thing that because I think a lot of folks think they need to be everyone's TikTok influencer. Like, no, you don't. Yeah. Or even your own LinkedIn influencer. Actually, no, you don't. Like, you can do your job and you can do it well. Unless your job is to be posting on social media, there is not a gigantic reason for you to be all out on every platform 24/7 a day. Like, there are plenty of ways that you can tell who you are and what you want to share under your own limits. It's the same thing. It's like you don't have to be someone with 10,000 followers. You don't have to post every single day. And I think we have to sort of hammer that home. It's like you work for a living, and 95% of your job does not require you to be on social media every day. Yeah. What is it? Everyone chill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And my client, I get a lot of that from clients too. They're like, oh, I have to be everyone, and I don't really want to be. And I was like, look, we have to draw a distinction between, what's necessary for your business and, what is comfortable for you and everything. You don't have to be, like you said, you curate what you want to have out there. It doesn't have to be your own version of a reality show.
It really does not. So. It's like you don't have to put every single bill you ate, every single place that you went. Like, I've done all this traveling, nobody knows because I haven't actually posted it. Because like, I don't need to. I really don't. Like, the folks, I took some awesome pictures, and they're my pictures. And I actually like the fact that like I'm controlling how I view everything. It's like, when I need to actually put something up that might be kind of interesting, and I did. Like, I hadn't really talked about my job for 6 months. And so when we hit our 6-month anniversary, I was like, okay, well now it would be kind of cool to kind of show what we've been doing. So I made a video with our team of like the work that we just did, and like and I only put on LinkedIn. And someone was asking me, why do you post anywhere? I'm like, because the only place that really matters is LinkedIn, because this is my job. So that's what I'm going to show. And I'm like, oh wow, yeah. I'm like, yeah, like I am 100% curating how I am seen on these platforms, and it wasn't like I didn't get a big response, because I did. So you can do that, and it's okay. And it's not the end of the world if you don't become a LinkedIn guru. It's really not. It's all good.
Yeah, and not to mention, if you're posting quality stuff or things you really care about, like you just said, the 6-month marker, I think I saw that too, and I loved it. People then, when they see your stuff come up, they know it's not junk. Do you know what I mean? Like they're gonna pay it that extra, or at least I tend to pay it that extra attention, because it's not just posting for the sake of posting. It's something that's actually authentic or quality, or that the person wants to share. So I give it more attention than if they were posting all the time.
Exactly. And I think that's, as people grow into like, look, we are what, 10, 12 years into people showing more of who and what they are for real.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that, that's a preteen. That's not even a teenager.
Yeah.
So and the platforms have gotten faster and quicker. Probably to say, you think about it, it was probably from like 2015 till now, so that's like 7 years. So you're talking about human history moving faster than ever in the last 7 years. So that's a lot of people to catch up with and to be overwhelmed with and try and figure out how to navigate. So yeah, it's definitely an unusual set of circumstances, but something that we can adapt to as we go and try our best not to be completely overwhelmed with it all.
Yeah, I mean, and again, just sort of looking for the fun part, not to forget that, and this goes for business too. It's like we can get so focused on the end result that it can cause us to lose sight of the actual reason we started doing something, or the enjoyment, or the rewarding aspects of it. And I think social media is a little like that. Like, use it the way that is going to work for you, that serves your purposes, not the other way around. I used to be a runner, and I at a certain point I noticed that I wasn't enjoying running anymore, and I thought to myself, what is going on? I used to love this. And I realized it was because all I was doing every run that I went out on was running towards the goal. Like, all right, more miles, do it faster, do it better, have a better form. Like, I was training almost just to train, and I totally was losing sight of why I started running to begin with. And I think that for me, it's even true in my business. Like, I don't ever want to lose sight of why I'm doing this. And it's really, there's a big component of connecting and giving back and being sort of an engine for these mission-driven entrepreneurs. And keeping that in focus helps me keep my energy and enthusiasm, even on the long run days, so to speak.
So speaking of on the long run days,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do for your self-care?
Self-care, yoga. All yoga every day if I can. Yep. Yoga.
Really?
Walking with the dog. She's always good fun. And I love TV and movies. I got to admit, I'm a TV junkie. So.
Okay, so are we TV or reality TV or both?
No, just TV, no reality TV. Yeah, sorry. I'm more like on the British mysteries spectrum.
You're about Doctor Who. Okay, I get
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Fine. I love reality television. I like scripted TV as well. But reality TV is my catnip. So wait, do you go to yoga class every day or you at home?
No, I do it at home. Totally at home. Yeah. I keep meaning to do a class, but you know what it is? It's, with my schedule, I fit it in wherever I can. So it's a moving target, and that makes it easier to do at home.
Well, 100% was on the schedule. Like, all right, I can lock it in here.
Okay, sounds good.
And you're done. That's what I can do. Very cool. No, it's interesting. So, like, when you were in the pandemic, how did you navigate your self-care?
To be honest, the pandemic, I mean, it was difficult. It wasn't that different for me because I was working from home before.
Aha.
So the mechanics, you know, situationally, it wasn't that different. The biggest difference was now my husband was also working from home.
You're like, uh-oh.
So that was the big challenge. The two of us, you know, living and working from home and not going anyplace, made it uber challenging. But we figured it out. We coordinated and figured it out. Not watching the news any more than necessary. Sometimes I do have to turn it off.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, believe it or not, during the pandemic, it in some ways I was more social than ever before because people were open to connecting over video.
True. Yeah, I would say that was true.
So, you know, like if I'd only be attending a couple of events in person during the week, now I could be on tons. And, you know, I actually kind of enjoyed that part. You know, nobody expected you to go in person anywhere, so it made it a lot easier to get together with people.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting now because I was talking to a friend of mine and we used to go to like a ton of in-person tech events.
Mm-hmm.
And we connected for the first time in like forever because she had moved and just came back to New York for a visit. And she was saying like, what would it take to get you to go to a tech event now? And I'm like, a whole lot. Because I'm like, why do I need to go to this? I don't.
Yeah.
Like, you definitely see like what was really worth your time versus that was just kind of going through the motions of it all. And I'm much more curated about my time, about where I will go from like a professional business networking section than anything else. I'm like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to go, but I'm not just going to go just to go anymore.
Right. Well, you'll definitely appreciate this on the experiential vibe. Like for me, that's a big part of the decision factor, right? Like how energized is this community? What's the vibe going to be? If the more fun the community and the vibe and the whole experience seems like it's going to be, the more likely I am to show up in person.
Yeah, otherwise, I don't want to spend time. Thanks. I got better things to do.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
time is so limited now. It's like I
Mhm.
literally don't have the time. So if I'm choosing to do something, it's because I really want to do it.
Yeah.
I really see some value in the people and the energy and the spirit of it all. So I definitely concur. And so my last question for you about that. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
Oh, a give or an ask of the audience. Huh. That's a
Either
good.
or both.
Well, the give is easy. I do free strategy session. I offer a free strategy session, 30 minutes. Anyone can sign up with me through my website, hellomavyn.com. And in terms of an ask, I don't think I really have an ask. If anyone wants to connect with me or give me feedback, I'm always open to that. But otherwise, I only have a give today.
I like that one though. I think, and we'll put all the details in our show notes so folks can connect with you. And I think it's awesome. I think again, like being open to connections with folks, knowing you can do it in, much less stressful ways means a lot. And again, it can really be a little bit of video chat and there's a video. It can be a single, a phone call.
Yeah.
So, which is awesome. No, Nicole, I am so glad we finally got to do this because, as I thought, you're just a delight and a wonderful woman to chat with. And, how you're helping women is so amazing and so needed. And so I want everyone to follow you and find all your information, which we will throw in the show notes so everyone can find you and tweet it out, so you can help more women, because I think the more that we can just, empower, encourage and cheerlead other women in business, the absolute better. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Laura. You're the best.
Cool. And as I said, we'll put all the details in the show notes that you can find through Nicole. And that is our show.